Let me tell you about the Vorthak Empire, the galaxy's self-appointed nightmare fuel dispensers. Picture this 8-foot-tall purple octopi with anger management issues and a serious case of superiority complex. For 3,000 years, these tentacled terror merchants had been conquering civilizations with nothing more than scary holograms and strongly worded threats. And honestly, it worked like a charm. Commander Grix Talk stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Nightmare's Edge, watching another pathetically easy conquest unfold on his view screen. The Fluffians, imagine if rabbits evolved into a spacefaring civilization but kept the whole scared of their own shadow, were already broadcasting their surrender. They hadn't even waited for the full intimidation package. Commander gurgled his second-in-command, Blub Rex, through his translator device. The Fluffians offer tribute of 70% of their yearly carrot production and promise to build a statue in your honor. Grix Talk's tentacles writhed with satisfaction. Pathetic. Make it 80% and demand they name their biggest moon after me. These creatures have no spine whatsoever. The truth was, the Vorthak had discovered the perfect formula centuries ago. Why waste resources on actual warfare when you could just scare entire civilizations into submission? Show them some holographic footage of previous conquests, maybe blow up a few asteroids for dramatic effect, and boom, instant galactic domination. Fear was the ultimate weapon, and they had weaponized it to perfection. Sir, another officer announced, we've received the scouting report on the next target system. It's called Sol, third planet from their star. The inhabitants call themselves humans. Grix Talk barely glanced at the datapad. Let me guess, another primitive species with delusions of grandeur? How many ships do they have? Relatively few, sir. But the scouts noted some unusual behavior patterns in their media transmissions. Spare me the details. Grix Talk waved a dismissive tentacle. Schedule our arrival for next cycle. I want this wrapped up quickly. I have a massage appointment on Zephyria Prime, and these lesser species are cutting into my relaxation time. As the Nightmare's Edge set course for Earth, Grix Talk congratulated himself on another routine conquest. After all, what could possibly go wrong? They had never encountered a species that didn't immediately wet themselves at the first sight of a Vorthak battlecruiser. This Earth would be no different. How wrong he was about to be. The Vorthak fleet dropped out of hyperspace on a Tuesday morning, which in retrospect was probably their first mistake. Humans, as it turns out, are particularly sarcastic on Tuesdays. Commander Grix Talk activated the standard intimidation protocol. Massive holographic projectors painted the sky above major Earth cities with images of burning worlds, conquered civilizations, and the mighty Vorthak armada in all its tentacled glory. The surrender demand echoed across every communication frequency on the planet. Greetings, insignificant species of Earth, his translator boomed across radio waves and internet streams alike. We are the Vorthak Empire, conquerors of 1,000 worlds. You have 30 of your time units called hours to surrender unconditionally, or face the same fate as the Zephyrians, the Crystalline Collective, and the mighty Fluffian Republic. Grix Talk settled back in his command throne, tentacles crossed smugly. Any moment now, the panicked surrender broadcasts would begin flooding in. Instead, his communications officer looked confused. Sir, we're receiving multiple transmissions, but they don't appear to be surrender offers. What do you mean? Grix Talk snarled. Down on Earth, Admiral Janet Tank Morrison was having the time of her life. Tank had earned her nickname during her Army days by literally driving a tank through a brick wall because the door was locked and she was running late for a meeting. Now, as head of Earth's newly formed Alien Contact Division, she was approaching this situation with her characteristic blend of military precision and complete inability to take anything too seriously. So let me get this straight, Tank said into her headset while reviewing the alien transmission. These guys think they're scary because they have tentacles and a bunch of old home movies. Professor Eddie Spinowski, her civilian advisor and the world's most enthusiastic xenobiologist, was practically vibrating with excitement. Eddie was the kind of guy who would poke a sleeping bear just to see what happened, and had actually done so on 3 separate occasions. "Janet, this is incredible." Eddie bounced in his chair. "Do you realize we're witnessing the first contact with an aggressive expansionist species? The sociological implications alone, and look at their ship design. It's clearly optimized for psychological impact rather than tactical efficiency. Fascinating." "Eddie, focus," Tank laughed. "What do we tell the squid guys?" Meanwhile, across Earth's internet, humanity was doing what it did best, turning everything into a meme. The hashtag Squid Squad was trending within hours. Someone had already auto-tuned Grix Talk's threats into a catchy dance remix. A teenager in Ohio had live-streamed herself doing her homework with the alien mothership visible through her bedroom window. Caption reading, "Aliens invading, but this calculus still won't solve itself." Back on the nightmare's edge, Grix Talk was experiencing something entirely foreign to his species, confusion mixed with mounting frustration. "Sir." "Yo, sir." His communications officer reported nervously, "We're receiving thousands of transmissions. Most appear to be questions. They want to know about our biology, our technology, our culture. One transmission is requesting an interview for something called a podcast. Another is asking if we're hiring." "Hiring?" Grix Talk's voice rose to a shriek that his translator rendered as digital static. "And sir," the officer continued hesitantly, "several of their military installations have responded to our ultimatum with what our computers translate as pics or it didn't happen, and something called OK Boomer." For the first time in his 3-century military career, Commander Grix Talk was speechless. This was not going according to plan. By day 2 of the invasion, Grix Talk was ready to escalate things. Clearly, these humans were too primitive to understand the gravity of their situation. Time for a practical demonstration. "Target their largest asteroid in this system," he commanded. "We'll show them the power of Vorthak plasma cannons. Nothing says we mean business like vaporizing a few billion tons of space rock." The demonstration was flawless. The asteroid, roughly the size of Manhattan, disappeared in a spectacular flash of purple energy that could be seen from Earth with the naked eye. Grix Talk leaned back, satisfied. Now they would understand fear. What happened next would haunt his nightmares for years to come. Within minutes, human social media exploded with excitement. Not terror, excitement. Alien Light Show began trending. Someone had already created a slow-motion compilation video set to dramatic music. The European Space Agency issued a press release thanking the aliens for solving our asteroid impact preparedness budget issues. NASA began publicly speculating about the energy output and requesting the technical specifications. But it was the memes that really broke Grix Talk's spirit. Someone had photoshopped his face onto a tentacled character from human animated films, complete with dialogue bubbles saying, "I meant to do that and trust me, I'm an alien." Another meme showed his ship with the caption, "When you try to look tough, but you're really just a flying squid with anger issues." "Sir," Blubrex reported with barely concealed panic, "their global communication network has given us nicknames. You're being called Commander Calamari, and our ships are now known as flying squids or angry space octopi." Tank, meanwhile, was having daily press conferences that had become appointment television across the globe. Her approach to intergalactic diplomacy was refreshingly direct. "Look, Commander Calamari," she said, addressing the cameras while knowing the aliens were monitoring all broadcasts. "We get it. You guys are used to everyone being scared of you. But here's the thing, we're humans. We made horror movies for entertainment. We invented extreme sports because regular sports weren't dangerous enough. Last week, a guy in Florida wrestled an alligator just to impress a date. You're going to have to try harder." Eddie had set up a research station and was live streaming his analysis of the alien technology 24/7. His viewer count had reached millions. What's particularly interesting, he explained to his global audience while pointing at the alien ship hovering overhead, is how their design prioritizes intimidation over functionality. See those spikes? Purely decorative. And the skull motifs are culturally fascinating but aerodynamically questionable. The breaking point came when a group of teenagers in Tokyo started a flash mob directly underneath the main Vortex ship. Hundreds of young humans gathered in the street, playing music and dancing while literally pointing and laughing at the mighty alien vessel above them. Someone had brought glow sticks. It looked more like a rave than a terror response. Grix Talk watched the live feed in growing horror. They're mocking us," he whispered. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "morale among the crew is dropping rapidly. Some of the younger soldiers are asking if we can just go home." For the first time in Vortex military history, a conquest was making them look ridiculous. And humans, as they were quickly learning, had an infinite capacity for turning anything into a joke. Tank and Eddie decided it was time to show these alien bullies what real psychological warfare looked like. If the Vortex wanted to play mind games, humanity was about to teach them who invented the concept of mental trauma. "Eddie," Tank said during their morning briefing, "what's the most terrifying thing you can think of?" "Ooh, good question." Eddie rubbed his hands together gleefully. "Depends on the target audience. For a species that rules through fear and intimidation, probably discovering that their victims not only aren't afraid but actively enjoy danger." Perfect. Time for some cultural exchange. The plan was beautifully simple. Instead of responding to threats with fear, humanity would respond with hospitality. Aggressive, overwhelming, absolutely terrifying hospitality. Tank's first move was to send a formal invitation to Commander Grix Talk for a friendly cultural exchange program. The invitation included a care package launched directly at their flagship, a gesture of goodwill that doubled as a demonstration of human missile accuracy. Inside the care package, a selection of human entertainment media, some Earth food samples, and a handwritten note from Tank that read, "Welcome to the neighborhood. Hope you like horror movies and spicy food. Xoxo, Janet." The movies were Tank's masterstroke. She'd carefully selected humanity's greatest hits in psychological terror: The Exorcist, Saw, Alien. The irony wasn't lost on her, The Ring, and for good measure, a few episodes of a reality show called Naked and Afraid. Eddie had contributed several documentaries about extreme sports, natural disasters, and a particularly disturbing episode about competitive eating contests. Within hours of the Vortex watching this entertainment, their entire command structure was in chaos. Sir Blubrex reported with trembling tentacles, "The humans create these images of terror for pleasure? Recreation? The computer analysis suggests they voluntarily consume fear-inducing content and pay currency to do so." Grix Talk was staring at a freeze frame from The Exorcist with the 1,000-yard stare of a broken being. They make their children watch this for fun? It gets worse, sir. The documentaries show humans voluntarily jumping from high places with only thin ropes to stop them from dying. Others deliberately enter enclosed spaces with dangerous predators. Some consume plants that cause them physical pain and call it delicious. The food samples had caused their own psychological crisis. The ghost pepper sauce had hospitalized 3 Vortex soldiers who had made the mistake of taste testing it. The surströmming, fermented fish that Swedes somehow considered food, had triggered a ship-wide evacuation of the entire deck where it was opened. But it was the follow-up transmission from Tank that really sent them over the edge. "Hey, Commander Calamari." Her cheerful voice broadcast across all frequencies. "Hope you enjoyed the movie night. Tomorrow we're planning to show you some human recreational activities. Ever heard of bungee jumping? How about swimming with sharks? We've got a guy in Australia who wants to introduce you to his pet crocodiles. They're really friendly once you get to know them." Eddie's contribution was a detailed presentation about human history. We thought you might enjoy learning about our past, his enthusiastic voice explained over footage of gladiatorial combat, medieval warfare, and extreme mountain climbing. These are just some of the activities humans developed for entertainment purposes. The presentation included a segment on human pets, specifically, the fact that humans voluntarily shared living spaces with predators like dogs, descendants of wolves, cats, efficient killing machines, and in some cases, actual wolves, tigers, and snakes. The humans, Grix Talk whispered to his command staff, keep death machines in their homes and call them good boys. By the end of the week, the mighty Vorthak Empire was experiencing its first ever fleet-wide panic attack. The psychological warfare reached its crescendo when humanity decided to share its greatest cultural achievement, the concept of hold my beer and watch this. Tank had compiled a highlight reel of human stupidity that doubled as a demonstration of humanity's casual relationship with mortality. The video opened with a man attempting to jump his motorcycle over a canyon, continued with footage of people surfing during hurricanes, and included several clips of individuals who had decided that wrestling with large predators seemed like a reasonable weekend activity. The thing about humans, Eddie explained in his narration, clearly enjoying himself, is that we have this wonderful phrase, seemed like a good idea at the time. This usually precedes our most spectacular disasters, which we then turn into entertainment for others. The documentary included a segment on human sports, activities that any reasonable species would classify as elaborate suicide attempts. Base jumping, free solo rock climbing, big wave surfing, and something called wingsuit flying that appeared to be humans attempting to become flying squirrels. Note, Eddie continued cheerfully, these are recreational activities. Humans do these things for fun, often while consuming alcohol, which impairs their already questionable judgment. But it was the section on haunted houses that finally broke Commander Grix talk completely. Humans. Me. Eddie explained over footage of people screaming in terror while navigating artificial horror scenarios, but create elaborate simulations of their worst fears and then pay money to experience them. They call this fun. Popular themes include being chased by fictional monsters, trapped in small spaces with disturbing imagery, and scenarios involving zombies, ghosts, and various forms of supernatural terror. Grix Talk watched in growing horror as humans voluntarily entered buildings designed to terrify them, screamed in genuine fear, and then emerged laughing and planning to return next year. "They pay for this?" he whispered. "Sir," his psychological warfare specialist reported with barely controlled panic, "our analysis suggests that humans have weaponized their own fear response. They've turned terror into a recreational activity." The final straw came when Tank sent another care package, this one containing tickets to a horror movie marathon, a haunted house season pass, and an invitation to try skydiving. "Thought you might enjoy some of our local entertainment." Her note read, "If you're still here next month, we're having our annual Extreme Sports and Horror Movie Festival. You're totally invited. P.S. We've got a guy who eats glass for entertainment. You have to meet him." The accompanying video was Tank and Eddie at an amusement park, riding a roller coaster that defied several laws of physics while screaming with what the Vorthak could only interpret as battle cries. They were followed by footage of humans at a horror movie premiere, cheering and applauding at scenes of fictional carnage. "Sir," Blub Rex reported with a voice that had risen several octaves, "morale among the crew has collapsed entirely. Half the soldiers are requesting transfers to non-combat positions. The other half are asking if we can just pretend we never found this system." Grix Talk stared at the view screen showing Earth, a small blue planet inhabited by beings so terrifying they scared themselves for recreation. "Signal the fleet," he said quietly. "We're leaving." "Sir? We're retreating?" "We're not retreating," Grix Talk corrected with the last shreds of his dignity. "We're making a strategic withdrawal from a system inhabited by beings too dangerous to conquer. Mark Earth as a restricted zone. No Vorthak vessel is to approach this system under any circumstances." As the Nightmare's Edge prepared to jump to hyperspace, Grix Talk made one final log entry. Personal note: have discovered a species that treats terror as entertainment and danger as recreation. Conquest inadvisable. Recommend immediate psychological counseling for all crew members exposed to human cultural materials. The mighty Vorthak fleet fled Earth system, leaving behind only a brief transmission. Sorry to bother you. Have a nice day. 6 months later, the galactic political landscape had changed dramatically. Word of humanity's victory over the Vorthak Empire had spread faster than a viral cat video, which was particularly impressive considering most alien species didn't have cats. The Fluffians were the first to rebel. After intercepting human media broadcasts, they realized that beings who considered horror movies date-night material had successfully terrified their former oppressors into fleeing. If humans could scare the Vorthak, maybe the Fluffians could too. Their revolution consisted mainly of refusing to pay tribute and sending strongly worded letters, but it worked. The demoralized Vorthak garrison withdrew without a fight. Soon, the entire Vorthak Empire was collapsing like a house of cards in a hurricane. Species that had been conquered through fear suddenly realized their oppressors were just really tall octopi with self-esteem issues. The psychological foundation of Vorthak power had crumbled the moment someone had stood up to them and laughed. Tank found herself promoted to head of the newly formed Human Diplomatic Corps, a job description that essentially read travel the galaxy and accidentally terrify everyone into behaving. Their motto, suggested by Eddie, was speak softly and carry a big stick, but also mention you do extreme sports for fun. The Corps' first diplomatic mission was to the former Vorthak homeworld, where the government had formally requested human mediation in their surrender negotiations with their former subjects. Apparently, word had gotten out that humans were reasonable but completely insane, which was the best diplomatic reputation anyone could ask for. Eddie had become the galaxy's foremost expert on human-alien relations, a field he'd basically invented. His research papers on terror as entertainment, a human perspective, and why humans keep predators as pets, a xenobiological analysis, were required reading at diplomatic academies across 3 sectors. The key, Eddie explained during a lecture at the Galactic University, is that humans have evolved to find danger exciting rather than paralyzing. We've turned our fear response into a recreational activity. To species that use fear as a weapon, this is incomprehensible and therefore terrifying. As for Commander Grix Talk, he'd eventually return to Earth. Not as a conqueror, but as a patient in humanity's first interspecies therapy program. The Tank had suggested it after receiving his formal request for asylum, which had been written in crayon and included several apologies and a drawing of him and a human shaking hands. "I don't understand you people," he admitted during one of his sessions with Dr. Martinez, a therapist who specialized in trauma recovery. "You create artificial scenarios designed to terrify you, then you laugh about it. You voluntarily jump from great heights. You keep creatures that could kill you as household companions. How does your species survive?" Well, Dr. Martinez had replied thoughtfully, "We've found that if you're going to be scared anyway, you might as well enjoy it. Plus, most of the things that really terrify us are things like public speaking and taxes. The dangerous stuff is just fun." The therapy sessions were going well. Grix Talk had even agreed to try mini-golf, though he'd drawn the line at the haunted house down the street. The galaxy's new status quo was surprisingly peaceful. Nobody wanted to fight the species that considered warfare a recreational activity and had turned fear into entertainment. The phrase "don't make the humans come over there" had become the galactic equivalent of "don't make me turn this car around." Tank's final report to Earth's government was characteristically brief: mission accomplished. Accidentally became the galaxy's peacekeepers by being ourselves. Recommend we continue doing exactly what we've always done. P.S. Eddie wants to organize a pan-galactic extreme sports competition. I'm pretending to consider it while actually planning the logistics. And somewhere in the depths of space, Former victims of the Vortak Empire were learning humanity's greatest lesson. Sometimes the best way to deal with bullies is to be so completely, bewilderingly fearless that they scare themselves. The universe, it turned out, was a much more interesting place when the scariest species was also the one that considered terror a form of entertainment.